Hey guys, hopefully you know me. I'm Nick, pastor at the church, but also one of my tasks is just keeping an eye on the men's ministry and making sure that, we're focused on God, but also pastoral support for the guys. This is the first of probably a few videos I'll do, chatting with Joab about maybe doing like a video on this men's group. Just to encourage you guys, but also talk about what we're doing, share about what we're doing. There are so many new guys coming into the church. What God is doing is phenomenal. And I'm just really aware that over the last couple of years, we've seen the men's ministry grow, and we've loved the Monday night gatherings of the men called Men Day, which at the beginning of this year we've sort of paused. Because of the life groups starting up. We want to encourage the guys to kind of be involved in the life groups. What we're missing as well is kind of gathering, being together, doing some stuff together. So I'd like to invite you all to share in the group ideas for social events, just to get us together, maybe go and hang out somewhere. Go for a walk and talk, learn and pray. But also, sports events that we want to do. Someone mentioned fishing, but also we can go to like a racetrack event. I think Mark was up for a banger racing, going to watch that. Or if there's like a festival. I know there's a men's festival that's coming up in a couple of months' time called The Gathering, so we could share some information on that. There is also all sorts of other things that we could do. So if you've got an idea, share it, and then we can sort of weigh it up and decide what we want to do. When I was thinking about kind of what we could do socially, I was really struck by the Lord. The Lord just put this thought in my head, and I couldn't understand what it was to start off with, but it's the passage... I'll just read it. It's the passage in Mark. It's recorded in Matthew, but also in Mark. Mark 11:15-17, and it's when Jesus goes into Jerusalem. He's literally just entered Jerusalem on the donkey, and he goes straight to the temple. And on reaching Jerusalem, it says Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables and the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. He's causing a bit of a scene. It goes on to say, and as he taught them, he said, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you've made it a den of robbers. So that's Mark 11:15-17. And I was thinking, Lord, why have you given me this verse right now? And it is important to the context of gathering socially as guys in this church for such a time as this. God is doing amazing things in this church. There is so much that he's doing in work in our individual lives, but he's also doing so many things that we can share with other people. The opportunity for evangelism and to tell other people. We're ordinary guys. We're just regular men. But he's brought us together, and with the power of Jesus Christ, we can do all sorts of things. We want to hang out, we want to have fun, we want to spend time together. And that's so important because we're going to, just like in the Men Days, encourage one another, learn from one another, grow with one another, with God, build one another up. And these are all things that Jesus taught that we should do, and his disciples wrote about in the New Testament that we should do to encourage one another and build one another up. And so we're all learning together. But the social side of the thing, I was thinking, oh man, these verses, what was that all about? Jesus, you overturned the tables in the temple. You set the record straight, and you drew the people back to really what's important. What did God say about the house of God, the temple? It's his place. It's a place of prayer. It's a place of revering God. And I was reminded of experiences that I've had of men's socials in other churches that I've been a part of. And, mostly Jesus wasn't mentioned in those men's gatherings, the time that we had together. Jesus was like, an afterthought, really. It would be like, okay, let's get to the next activity, and it was all about what stuff we were doing, and maybe we'd have like a bit of prayer shoehorned in between these things, but it was a little bit half-hearted, and mentioning Jesus was a bit like a puncture to the banter that was going on, or like you're driving along a road and you hit an awkward bump. It's just a bit like the uninvited guest to a good time. That nobody really knows, no one is really kind of thinking about, no one really wants to hang out with, or talk about. Jesus was made to be that guy, and I just felt that we need to be so careful to not be that church, because we're not that church. We aren't that church. God has lit the fire in this place. He is doing so many wonderful things. He's guiding people into faith, which is not happening elsewhere. What he's doing here is not normal. So when we talk about let's go and do some socials and have fun, because it's so important to chill out and have fun, but also just to recognize that we're here because of Jesus. We're here to build one another up and to grow in him. And it's so easy for us men sometimes when we get together not to talk about God. At least that's my experience in other churches. But for the last few years with the Men Days, it's not been like that. It's just been incredible. Praying for one another, being honest with one another, trusting one another, going back to the Word, reflecting on the sermon. And when we've done that, God has moved. He's grown in us. And we've realized we are just ordinary bunch of guys, but God can do amazing things to work through us. When we go out and socialize, when we go and do another activity, let's remember that Jesus is in our heart. We're growing with him all the time. And together as a fellowship of guys, it's massively powerful for God. Jesus called his disciples to himself. They were ordinary guys. There's no difference between now and 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ called those guys to follow him, and he's definitely calling each one of us to follow him. And we need to make sure that we hold on to that when we share these ideas, and we go and have fun and we go and do some stuff. Because when we do that, when we're ready to give an account and to share about what God has done in our own lives, our own testimonies, what he's doing in this place, we're going to impact other people. So when we go to the races, when we go and when we go fishing, when we go and do all sorts of other activities, let's keep an eye out for other people that Jesus might just be leading to us to share. It's powerful when you go in numbers. You get supported by the Lord God working through each one of you. I was watching an episode of The Chosen last night, and my wife and I, Kathy and I, were watching it, and it's based on, is it Matthew 4:24? I only remember that because I've just written it down. I don't have this amazing encyclopedic memory for verses, but I do try, like we all do. And what was it? Here we go. So Matthew 4:24 is just one verse in the Bible, and the whole episode of The Chosen, episode 3, season 2, is based on this one verse. The verse says, "News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them." That's it. That's Matthew 4:24. Jesus had loads of people from Syria bringing diseased and possessed and paralyzed people that had lots of physical ailments, and he healed them all. The episode really struck me when I was thinking about this little video, because it's a social setting. Jesus is hardly in that episode. It's all the disciples that have gathered. They're just chilling out. They've made camp. Jesus is off healing this massive long line of people brought from Syria. And the disciples, the men and the ladies that are with them, Mary Magdalene and a few others, they're just chatting about what is going on with Jesus. They've all felt called to the mission, like we are called to the mission by Jesus. And they're just trying to make sense of what God's doing, and we're trying to make sense of what God's doing. And it's like, oh, what's going to happen next? Well, God keeps changing the script of what he's doing here in this church because we give him space to do it. And then they're thinking, oh, okay, what's going to happen with Jesus? He seems pretty popular. Maybe we're going to become famous, And they start questioning things and thinking about things in another way. Remember, Jesus isn't there. Jesus isn't with them. He's off he's very, very busy healing many people. Mary, his mother, comes and shares this amazing insight, and there's some tender moments just around the campfire. But again, it's a social setting. In fact, it's all done in one take. It's pretty amazing. Like most of the episode is done in one take. I don't know how they managed to film that, but it's amazing. But anyway, the end of the episode, they start arguing amongst themselves. They start getting frustrated with Matthew, who's amongst them, and his old job as a tax collector. They start seeing things not in the now, but from the worldly perspective again. They've taken their eyes off Jesus. At the end of the episode, Jesus comes in, he comes back, he returns to camp. He's absolutely exhausted. Hardly any words are spoken. His mother gets up and goes and tends to Jesus. He's absolutely, physically so shattered. He just about manages to stumble into bed, and he says his prayers, and he goes to sleep. And the rest of the disciples, the whole camp, all the ordinary people that Jesus has brought with him along this journey, on this ride with him, they don't know what's going to happen, but they can see what's happening from their own limited perspective. The truth is, Jesus is going about his phenomenal mission to save mankind. And they're there with their eyes off Jesus, without him amongst them, just missing the point and arguing amongst themselves and just having a chit-chat. And that's fantastic. That's amazing. Our lives are full of social interactions. But when we take our eyes off Jesus, we are not included in the way that he wants us to function and what he can do through us into other people. And it just really struck me because that was just a really wonderful social setting in that episode. But then the thing was, Jesus wasn't with them. So when we go out, let's remember that God is building the fire in this place. And when we go out and do things and when we spend time with one another, just as we have done in the lower room on the Monday nights, God works through us. Each of us carries the light that Jesus Christ has lit in us and that he is burning ever brighter in this church. We can tell stories of 63 salvations that Jesus has led people to. That is mostly not of our making. We've had little involvement in that over the last 2.5 months. All the baptisms, the healings, all the other stories of God doing stuff in this church. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'm telling you, I'm in touch with people from other churches and this stuff isn't happening elsewhere. So God is doing amazing things. Each one of us is just at the very beginning of what he can do through us. But for as long as our hearts remain focused on him and our eyes fixed on him, he can just keep doing new and more amazing things through us who have our feet set on the foundation to build one another up and encourage one another. Just remember, we're all just ordinary guys, but we're dealing amongst the extraordinary things that Jesus is doing. So share stuff, share ideas, share some social thoughts of what we could be doing, but I encourage you to never take your eyes off Jesus and always be ready because Jesus can work through us individually and even more so together as we go on. Cheers guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you soon. Cheers, bye.